Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think I'm going to paraphrase from you and just simply say what we're trying to get straight here is your firm that the three of you were in charge of amid the 8th largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States has somehow lost $1.2 billion of your customers' money, and none of you know where it went. And that's what's causing a lot of questions around here. I want to go back to Mr. Avalo. And you indicated earlier today, you confirmed that the Treasury operations, and apparently we need the Treasury operations person here. Her name is Christy Vavra, by the way. She was the head of Treasury Ops. She could sit down there in that empty chair, I'm sure. And that she was under your area of responsibility. Then you went on to say, but if somebody gave an order to move the money, would Christy know it? That would be my question to you. But then you went on to say, well, she would report to the person in charge of global operations. Now, who's that?
Senator, I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I apologize.
So you don't know who is in charge of global operations, which comes under your area of responsibility. I just told you the name, which I doubt you knew, the Treasury Ops person. Maybe you didn't or did. If someone gave an order to move the money around, would Christy Vavra know it?
Senator, I apologize. What I was intending to say was I did not know if she reported directly to the head of operations or whether she reported to someone who reported to the head of operations. I do know the name of the head of operations.
How many heads of operations, how many heads do we have to have around here before we finally drill down and find somebody's name that knows what the heck is going on?
Senator, I understand your frustration and the frustration of everyone in the room, and as I expressed in my testimony at the beginning, I too would like to know exactly what happened.
Why don't you put together a PowerPoint
funds.
or a TO chart or something so we could put everybody's name, and finally we probably get down to the custodian. Earlier you said the break the glass plan that was presented to the firm's leadership was dependent upon the use of revolving credit line. Now, the credit line was already there. It doesn't sound like a contingency. What was the break the glass plan if you exhausted the credit line?
Senator, I have not looked at the so-called break the glass scenario in more than 6 weeks, and so I do not recall exactly what was in it. It was a scenario that was designed to
So it's not a contingency, now it's a scenario, right?
It was designed to simulate what might occur if there were a loss of liquidity at the firm.
So was it a plan? Was it a contingency? Was it it was just a what?
It was a, I believe that initially it was done literally as that, to simulate what would happen and what would the liquidity impact on the firm be
Well, it
under,
sounds like it, well, it sounds like it was operational.
Scenario.
It sounds like somebody made a decision, either top or somewhere in your heads of operation here, that it became operational.
The intention was that the next step in that plan would have been to develop an operational plan. I do not believe one was ever developed from that.
Okay, let me return to a point made earlier. You stated in your testimony that the final days at MF Global were a classic run on the bank, yet Governor Corzine told us today that you all had enough cash to cover demand on Friday the 28th. Was there a run on the bank, or did you have enough cash? It's either one or the other.
Senator, I believe that at the end of every day that week, that we believed that, to the best of my recollection, we were advised that we did have liquidity on hand, but it was on the run, a run on the bank in the sense that liquidity sources were evaporating.
Well, the classic question is, if you had enough cash to cover the run, why'd you fall into bankruptcy?
Senator, I believe that after we had failed to engage in a transaction to sell the firm, after we had discovered that there was an apparent gap in our segregated funds, we no longer thought we were in a position to continue operating.
Okay, Governor, in your testimony, you state that during the week of October 24, you reduced the MF Global match book by $10 billion. You further state that you took extraordinary steps to ensure that you were able to honor customer requests to withdraw funds or collateral. Is this correct?
It is, sir.
Okay, thank you. You said you drew down your line of credit from J.P. Morgan. That was about $1.2 billion, I think. On October 27, you stated you sold $1.3 billion in commercial paper, over $300 million in corporate securities. Friday, you sold $4.5 billion in U.S. Treasuries. Is that about correct?
I think that's what my written statement conveyed.
In addition, you said that during the week that you unwound hundreds of millions worth of RTM and sold the underlying debt instruments. How much was that? I think I understand it's about $900 million.
I think that is the number, sir.
So we have $1.2 billion from J.P. Morgan, $1.3 billion in commercial paper, $0.3 billion in corporate securities, $4.5 billion in treasuries, and $0.9 billion in RTMs, for a grand total of $8.2 billion. By my math, $10 billion minus $8.2 billion is $1.8 billion. Where did this unaccounted for $1.8 billion come from, and could it be, quote, loans from your customers' segregated accounts, according to the Breaking the Glass plan? I'm speculating.
Senator, I would have, my math may be poor, but my addition of that would be $10 billion of reduction in assets by reducing the match book. It would be reducing $4.5 billion on the asset side by the sale of the agencies, 1.3 on the commercial paper. As you know, the RTMs were derecognized, so that would not have been a reduction of the balance sheet and whatever the corporate securities were. There would be liabilities that are reduced at the same time, both on every one of those assets. And the purpose of that whole process, except for the $1.3 billion in commercial paper, was to produce less in margin calls from, or less margin postings that would actually be returned to the firm in each of those transactions. The commercial paper was Rule 125 eligible, and that was sold for purposes of having cash. So when the kind of people who were here on the first panel were asking for their money, we would have the cash immediately for that purpose.
Madam Chairwoman, I'm out of time, and I'll await the third round. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and